All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating book. It's one that tries to blend hardcore engineering with some pretty esoteric philosophy, all under this wild title, UFO Labs. So let me just start by asking you something right off the bat. Do you think you could build a flying saucer using just your mind? I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But the book we're exploring today actually argues that the answer is way closer to yes than you'd probably think. It's all about this radical idea of fusing ancient spiritual concepts with modern-day engineering. But before we start trying to build our own mind-controlled saucers in the garage, we first have to get our heads around the book's fundamental argument, and it all starts with rethinking the rules of technology as we know them. For a long, long time, the world of engineering has pretty much played by one set of rules, the Western approach. And look, it's been incredibly successful. But as this book points out, it's not the only game in town. It's not the only way to look at the world. The author is actually really upfront about this right from the beginning. They basically say, look, to really get what we're talking about here, you've got to be willing to hit pause on your disbelief just for a little while. It's an invitation, really, to see technology through a totally different lens. And that's the real heart of it. True innovation, the kind that really shakes things up, doesn't just come from making what we already have a little bit better. It comes from questioning the very foundations we've built on and being open to ideas that seem, well, kind of strange at first. Okay, so let's dig into that. The book really frames this whole debate around a central comparison, the philosophies behind Eastern and Western engineering. So on one hand, you have the Western approach. It's all about function, efficiency, solving one specific problem as effectively as possible. It celebrates the individual genius. But on the other hand, you have the Eastern approach, which is all about harmony, balance, and how a new creation fits into the bigger picture, the collective whole. And what's really cool is how you can see this in the real world. Think of a hyper-efficient, single-purpose machine. That's a classic Western idea. Now compare that to, say, a traditional Japanese garden, where every single rock and plant is placed to create a feeling of peace and harmony with nature. It's practicality versus a balance of beauty and function. Now, the goal here isn't to say one is better than the other. Not at all. The book's big proposal is, what if we could fuse them? What if we could create technology that's not just powerful and efficient, but also beautiful, sustainable, and actually in harmony with the world around it? You know, this idea of blending different worldviews, it's not entirely new. The book makes a point to highlight some of the, let's call them fringe pioneers, who were thinking this way a long, long time ago. And this is where things get really interesting. Let's talk about a guy named Otis Carr. He was an inventor who made an absolutely incredible claim. He said he'd successfully operated equipment using ancient concepts of mind control. Carr was completely convinced that ancient civilizations had mastered technologies that were way beyond what we have today, specifically the ability to control machines with just your consciousness. And he wasn't just talking about it. He claimed he actually built a working flying saucer that you could pilot entirely with your thoughts. Now, to be clear, Carr's work was eventually shut down by the government, and he was accused of being a fraud. But here's the thing. While his project might have failed, the core idea he was chasing, this link between our consciousness and technology, that idea never really went away. It's still inspiring people on the fringes of science today. Okay, so if you were going to even try to build a mind-controlled saucer, what would you use? How would it work? Well, the book introduces us to something it calls the Esoteric toolbox. At the very heart of this toolbox is a concept called Cymatics. Put simply, it's the study of how sound can literally shape physical matter. You've probably seen those cool videos online, sand on a metal plate that forms these intricate, beautiful geometric patterns when a certain sound frequency is played. That's Cymatics. So the book's theory goes like this. If sound can organize tiny grains of sand into complex shapes, what if you could scale that principle way, way up? The suggestion is that by using just the right frequencies and vibrations, you could potentially create a propulsion system that operates completely outside of our known laws of physics. And this is how it all supposedly comes together. It's a three-step process. First, you start with something physical. You generate a frequency, a sound, a vibration. Then comes the esoteric part. You focus your mind, your intent, on what you want to happen. And the book proposes that this focused intent could then literally direct those sound waves to shape and move physical matter, giving you control. So, after going through ancient philosophy, fringe inventors, and some pretty out there science, where does all this leave us? Well, the book argues that it leaves us standing on the edge of a completely new frontier. See, when you get right down to it, the flying saucer isn't really the point. It's just a vehicle, a metaphor, for a much bigger, much more profound idea. The real question this author is asking is, what amazing things could we achieve if we expanded our definition of technology beyond just circuits and code? Ultimately, the lesson here isn't whether you can build a UFO in your garage. The real takeaway is about embracing the principles behind this whole wild thought experiment. It's about recognizing the incredible power of keeping an open mind, the value of looking at problems from totally different angles, the importance of harmony in the things we build, and maybe most of all, the potential that's unlocked when we dare to question everything. And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. This whole exploration, from Eastern philosophy to mind control, it really just boils down to one simple question. What amazing future are we failing to build simply because we're too afraid to ask the truly wild what-if questions?